The 9th episode and conclusion to round 3 just dropped, and it's a shocker. Now, I was legitimately confused in real time by many aspects of what happened in the results. But before we get to any of that, there were 3 final performances left in Fantastic Queendom to watch and rate, so let's just start with that. Now, by the way, if you're wondering what is up with your avatar, now my main computer and storage drives failed last week tragically, and I'm unfortunately on a temporary laptop, and I'm hoping I can get all my files back so I can go back to business as usual, but in the meantime, this is the only solution I could think of in the time that I have to do it. So, please bear with me until then. Now keep in mind here that with my field-based rating system, I come up with a score out of 10, and I don't really think about the performances that come before or after, and, if there's been a whole week between performances, the range that I rate the first 3 performances in a round, and the next 3 performances in a round from week to week, they could be scored in with like a difference of 0.2 points higher or lower, just depending on my mood, so just keep that in mind. And with that said, let's just get into this. So the 4th performer in round 3, part 2, is LOONA. In the preps, we can see how, on their wall of fan messages, LOONA fans mentioned how they want more people to know about the group. And so LOONA's taking this, taking in all their fan feedback, and, they're watching a compilation of fan videos. LOONA members actually get teary-eyed during this, and then ultimately, they choose the song Butterfly based on what their fans say. And, initially they started to use the song and had a sad arrangement. But then, the members being very hands-on, they decided to tweak and request tweaks and modifications so that it was not too different from the original. And we get to see just how hard LOONA works to keep their choreography in sync and, having all their dance moves line up. And they're really meticulous about it. And it was impressive to see them practice because, I've kind of become a fan of this group since the show started. Now, I'm not listening to all their music or anything, but I'm always looking forward to their performances. I think they perform well. I think very highly of them. And it's because their methodology seems to always guarantee a high minimum level of quality when they deliver their performances. So when it gets to the actual performance, though, it started a bit on the curious, mellow side. The performance was very clean and very much in sync as it usually is. And as everyone observes, it's very kind of laid back and maybe even a little bit sad. And it's maybe the most subdued of all their performances, but it's still highly precise. Now, I watched this thing very intently, and you can tell it wasn't meant to be as flashy or powerful as their past performances, and I actually think they took the wrong advice in their prep because everyone loved their past performance in round 2 when they went all theatrical and had fun with different costumes. And I criticized them in other performances they did, where I said, when they all wear the same outfit, there's not a lot of, you can't notice the shift between the different camera angles or when they change the focus to a different part of the stage, and it becomes visually harder to read because when the cameras change to another person dancing and doing something else, and they're wearing the same uniform, it just seems like the same person sometimes. And so, I do think that they should have continued with the trend of having them individually stand out and just telling a performance so you could follow the performance. Now, I noted the score in my head, and it started at a 7.8, it went to an 8.2, it jumped up really high to an 8.8, and then it kind of landed at 9.2, and that was my feeling overall on the performance. The 5th group was Brave Girls. In preps, they had mentioned past critique and fan feedback regarding how they are kind of adored for being so casual, or how people want to see their unique flavor, but in recent performances, they had become very different and maybe harder to relate to. Now, I felt this from the very beginning, that their sincerity is their strength, and they are weakest when they get in their own heads about trying to be flashy or poshy. I've mentioned this in the past videos, that I like that they're so casual behind the scenes, but then they get on stage and their choices are kind of strange, but actually they've grown on me during this competition. And then, while the group was streaming to their fans, they had this interesting fan meet, with live performances and Q&A, and what they eventually decided to do was choose the song Red Sun. And I thought that was a great choice because it was true to their present situation, it's sincere, and it looks like, on top of that, they decided to put a Cinderella theme on it, but other than that, it looked like something that could really convey the situation they're in, and it would just come across really authentic. And I think that's where Brave Girls are the strongest, is when they're just being themselves. In the actual performance, they showed projections of their past struggles and how they came out on top at the precipice of near failure in the past. So I think the sentiment of the song was kind of really sad, and it kind of showed just how the Brave Girls, they have this emotional underdog story. And more than that, it's when I look at their past performance on the show, and my own commentary even says how the Brave Girls are not that brave. They tremble, they have like these nervous twitches, and they're very socially awkward a lot of the time. And, you know, it was interesting, this performance, because you could see just, it was very touching for fans and other viewers, and it just felt very, very sincere. And you just could not, I think you could just not help but feel what they're feeling. And so it was performed very well and without error. And, you know, despite Mnet's attempts to make it look otherwise in the past, you know, make it seem like Brave Girl's going to get kicked off, I don't know if you can consider that evil edit. Usually we call it evil editing if someone's going to get painted as an evil person, like Sin B was evil edited, right? But I would consider any misleading stuff by Mnet as evil editing at this point. So let's just say the term is evolving. Now, as I was watching this, my mental score started at a 7.8. And then it went up to 8.1, then 8.5, and then it landed at an 8.6. I enjoyed it a lot, and though I think the score that I gave it in the end, it's a bit lower. But that was where my gut was at the moment, so at this point I can't really change it. I don't do any retrospective changes. I always score it exactly in real time without thinking about the other performances, so I'm not holding numbers in my head. This is just basically how I feel about it. Now, Hyolyn was the last performer, and in preps she chose the song See Sea. It was a choice between See Sea and Bae, and you can tell kind of just how much she danced for See Sea during this kind of busking fan meet, that she wanted the fans to choose that song more. That's the impression I got from it, at least. And in the end, she ended up changing the name of the song to See Sea Bae, just to kind of appeal to her fans. And so you can see from the prep and commentary of how she like dealt with her solo career in the past, and, you know, having to busk on the streets instead of just performing in concerts, and she didn't always have access to venues and stuff. So you can see how much of a fighter she is and how actively engaged in the success of her own solo career she is. And her fans also seem to be really dedicated, you know, sitting outside in the sun during a busking event like this. They came all the way out to see her, and I thought that was really impressive. For this performance, she also had the idea to add more focus on the fans by getting a past fan turned dancer to appear on stage with her. And this kind of felt like a gimmick to me, but it also kind of worked. After that, she kind of further showed some more congeniality, which she has been showing a lot in the past few episodes, by gifting more things to her dancers. And so I don't understand the deal with this, but it showed that like Hyolyn is kind of like Santa Claus in a way. So in the actual performance, it was reminiscent of her round one song. It started with an interesting train view. It went very high energy, and it had good choreo throughout. Maybe she went too high energy early on, because for me, it started at 8.1, it went to an 8.3, then an 8.5, and so it was very low, and then it went to 8.9, and then it eventually reached a 9.4 by the end, and it was really just a slow climb, and there were long plateaus that, you know, I think those plateaus could have bored other viewers, and even I had the sense that, hey, this might be boring for people. I wasn't bored watching it, but I was always aware that this could be something that was boring for people. Now, I enjoyed it, and it also exploded before the finale where it kind of tapered off, but I actually thought this was the best performance this week as a live viewer here. When it comes to my personal rankings, Hyolyn came out on top. LOONA took second, Cosmic Girls got third, Brave Girls got fourth, VVZ got fifth, and Kepler was last. Now, thinking about this ranking, I'll admit, it doesn't really seem right. Now, last week's scores are generally lower compared to this week's, but I do recall Cosmic Girls putting on a great performance. And in my mind, I would say it was way more interesting than Hyolyn's. Now, I can't really do anything about my mood shifting week to week, so in terms of the scores, and, you know, here's the thing, if I were to boost all scores from last week by 0.2 from the previous week, it would drastically alter the ranking. And even though I think that would put Cosmic Girls above kind of like LOONA and maybe in the winning spot next to Hyolyn, it would drastically alter other scores, and it would, like, I don't think that VVZ did better than Brave Girls, and that's what would happen if I did add that 0.2, so I just gotta leave it as it is. You know, it is what it is. Now, when we get back to the Queen's chess room for the self-evaluation, something interesting happens. Brave Girls acknowledges Hyolyn, but knocks Kepler. Some fair moves by the Brave Girls. I think that in some ways it's kind of like saving their butts, but they basically said, they think they might be going home, they want to acknowledge Hyolyn. I guess knocking down Kepler is part strategy as well, because that's their best chance to survive. Basically, it makes no sense not to choose Kepler. Now, Kepler and VVZ both praised the Brave Girls, which was kind of interesting. I would say that was a very emotional performance, But a part of me also wondered, hey, what's going to happen here? Are all these girl groups going to get together and put Brave Girls above them in order to save the group from elimination? But then at the same time, that's kind of diminishing the quality of the performance. And the performance was really good. It's just in a class of its own. I guess you can't really rate all these performances next to each other. They just have different values, and I guess it depends on the person, on which one you think is the best. What happened is, the other groups, they didn't vote anyone above them. They completely dashed it. And then 3 groups voted for LOONA as below, and then 2 other groups put VVZ as lower. And what this ended up doing was just crazy. It basically ended up giving Brave Girls the full 1,000 points from just the self-evaluation, and it put them in first place. After this came the local judges and the global judges' votes, and they surprisingly put Brave Girls in first place as well. They overcame everything, basically, and landed in first place. This basically gave them an unbelievable huge chunk of the score. Shocking to me was Hyolyn's fall during this round, and the shift in scoring, I think, was brutal. I guess with the topic of this round being related to fans, maybe Brave Girls really did touch the most people. Now, I'm just not sure how much voting was done purely to save them from elimination, but like I said earlier, they could just as easily deserve it based on the criteria, and maybe the other ones just didn't connect with them. Now, Hyolyn mentioned that maybe she was stretched thin by doing so many performances at once, and while I do think maybe she was burdened with other competitors in part 1 of round 3, I think that part 2 of round 3 was all on her, and maybe it didn't show enough growth or difference from her round 1 performance for the judges. The crazy thing is that the score gap was punishing enough to push her to 4th place in round 3. So, let's take a look at the aggregate scoring for the round so far. So when it comes to round 3, if you look at it, Brave Girls got the highest score, it's 19,000, but the Cosmic Girls didn't trail very far behind with an 18,000. They've almost both doubled the scores of every other group, and so this round was really beneficial and completely changed the game for the Brave Girls, who were doing very poorly in the past rounds. They pretty much got last except for the round where LOONA did not show up. Now, LOONA, having had 0, and this should honestly be about a 7,000 if they actually got a chance to be scored properly, it would have put them only in 4th place in the total so far. So it really didn't matter that they didn't show up for that one round. It just shows how big the gap was between the best players and the rest of them. Brave Girls benefited really highly from round 3, so I guess they could have maintained these spots, but LOONA would have knocked VVZ to 5th place, and that's basically the only difference of what would happen if LOONA actually got ranked in round 1. And so here we are, it's sorted. Hyolyn is in 1st place, Cosmic Girls in 2nd, Brave Girls in 3rd, VVZ in 4th, LOONA in 5th, and Kepler in last place. So after this, there is this funny moment where Eunha claimed that 5th place seems kind of cute, and it was kind of this weird autistic reaction that everybody just laughed at, and even Sin B, she went out and facepalmed, and you have something interesting, which is Brave Girls choosing the order of the next performances. In addition to Queen treatment on the performance day, Brave Girls basically had set the order, but we don't get to see it yet. But basically all they allowed us to see was Hyolyn being first, and Brave Girls going last. And when it comes to the final round, we learn that half of the 60,000 point total package for the next round are decided by live judges. So the live performance is still very important. And the other 30,000 is decided according to the fans. You have 5,000 of that 30,000 being awarded for, I guess, views on YouTube. You have 5,000 more, which is decided by who's voting on the app or website. I can't remember which one. And then you have 20,000 points for music streaming. And it seems to be exclusively on Spotify. And I don't personally use that, but I think there's probably a way to listen to it, maybe with ads or something. But, for anyone voting, good luck. Everyone's getting their chance to put their single up. I was personally hoping that it would involve digital sales, because I believe, just based on past singing competitions, the willingness to buy a single or album is the best reason to vote for someone to win the competition. But in this case, especially with K-pop fans, as far as I'm concerned, the willingness to buy an album is something that can be gamed. And K-pop fans are the kind of people who buy like separate phones, SIM cards and stuff. And I guess streaming, you can't just make a whole bunch of dummy accounts and just stream all day long. It's a lot more difficult to do. And so I guess in this case, it's actually more fair. This is the minimum legwork fans have to do. If you want your group to win, you have to do the minimum legwork, and that will get them 30% of the way there. And that's the value of this score, basically. It can shift the game, but they do still need to put on a good performance. With that respect, there is an advantage for having the most fans. So I had the chance to check out some of the singles for each of the girl groups. They put the singles up on this Spotify page, and, I listened to them all. None of them really do anything for me, if I'm being completely honest. They're just kind of like generically okay songs in their own ways. But as far as the really unique ones, I think VVZ kind of takes it with this kind of dance, jazz kind of like feeling. And then the Brave Girls are kind of doing like this thing that's kind of different, more mellow and cool. And then in terms of like the more faster paced music, I would say LOONA kind of does it better than the other girls. Although you can argue that maybe Hyolyn goes harder in some ways. So that's kind of my general senses about it. I'm not blown away by any of these singles, so as far as saying it's all about the song that can take it away, I don't think it's going to come down to that. It's basically just going to be how rabid are your fans and how good is your performance when you perform in front of the judges. So I guess I'm just getting into the weeds now. In closing, having binged season 1 to prepare for the season, I think while I did see very impressive performances in the first season, there were a lot of also not so memorable ones, and it's not like I knew the names of the girls in the group. I kind of recognized like the leaders of some of the groups, and like a few, like I recognized like the members of Mamamoo, Idol. I recognized only basically the leader of the group, and there wasn't a lot of like even spread compared to this group. I can say that this season was a lot easier to follow, and coming out of it knowing the groups and individual members better than I did in season 1. Like, regardless of who wins, if anyone else's experience was like mine, I think all groups will come out with this kind of net benefit. But at the same time, before I watched this season, I did learn the girls' names by putting it down on a sheet, but it's not like I sat there and studied them. Fandoms can decide the winner, but seeing how people rallied for like the Brave Girls regarding even just the live judges and the globals and the competitor evaluations now, I'm not sure what to make of that. I don't think the Brave Girls were saved, and that's proved by the fact that in the self-evaluations, at least 3 of the groups didn't put Brave Girls above them. So no, they weren't actively trying to save Brave Girls. I think that their performance was touching, and I'm not gonna like diminish the appeal of that performance and whether or not it deserved it. I think it was a good performance. Maybe it does deserve first place, and let me know what you think. I'm just rambling now, so I guess that's pretty much the end of this video. Like, share, subscribe. Sorry for the weird video quality. I don't have the equipment that I normally have. Whatever, hopefully it works for you. And I guess I'll see you in the next video.